To cover today, but first, shout out to the Brooklyn Nets. Gutsy victory. I really admire the Nets. Up against the wall. James Harden, just his presence alone made all the difference. Kevin Durant, amazing, amazing performance last night. This obviously was the decisive game. That's what it feels like to me, at least. And now the Nets are where they need to be to bring a championship home to Brooklyn. I keep saying, when it happens, it'll be the first time since the 1950s that a team named Brooklyn will win a national championship. So big night for Brooklyn, big night for New York City last night. And yesterday, big day as well, as the state announced that the remaining COVID restrictions lifted. Really big deal, but the people in New York City earned it. I really want to say, and all over the state, of course, people did the work. People went out there, helped each other, protected each other, got vaccinated. This is a victory for the people of this city and this state, and it is the perfect way to lead us into the summer. It's going to be the summer in New York City. We know more than ever this is going to be one of the most amazing summers we've ever had, and it's going to be the perfect beginning of the big comeback of New York City. And again, all of that fueled by vaccination. And as of today, the numbers keep speaking loudly. As of today, from the very beginning of the vaccination effort, 8,831,882 doses. It's breathtaking. It's almost 9 million doses now. 9 million individual doses that have helped us to be safe. Now, we're going to keep building that. I want everyone to understand that. We've made tremendous progress. We have record low COVID positivity. The restrictions have been lifted. The city's coming back. But that's not a reason to stop. That's a reason to double down, do even more to get people vaccinated. That's why we announced the referral bonus program to work with community-based organizations, houses of worship, resident associations in NYCHA. And I want any organization out there who's listening who wants to be a part of that, wants to help get people vaccinated and bring funding into your organization at the same time, keep money in the community, go to nyc.gov/vaccine referral bonus. It is all about going out to the grassroots, reaching people where they live, answering their questions and concerns, helping them to understand that this could be the beginning of something so much better if we can get more and more people vaccinated. We also are adding a tremendous new incentive, really great incentive. When you sign up to get vaccinated, if you haven't been vaccinated, you sign up to get vaccinated, you can now win $2,500. Yes, $2,500 directly, debit cards, preloaded. 10 prizes will be given each week through July. This is a real opportunity to, after everything everyone's been through, I think the vast majority of New Yorkers could really use $2,500 right now. It would make a big difference in your lives. If you haven't been vaccinated, you're ready. All you have to do is make the appointment to qualify. Go to nyc.gov/vaccine finder. If you get vaccinated at any city-run site, you get to enter for a chance to win this amazing prize. Now, the whole idea here, incentives, working with community organizations, going to the grassroots, talking to people, getting doctors and pediatricians involved, and talking to their patients, all of this is about reaching farther and farther into communities with vaccination. Listen, so many people just need to have a real conversation. And I want you to hear from a leader who understands how important it is to have that conversation. Sometimes all it takes to convince someone to get vaccinated is just a real, thoughtful, honest conversation. And we are more and more making sure that's what happens all over the 5 boroughs, particularly in communities that haven't been vaccinated at as high a level as others. She is a former social worker, a longtime community activist, and now a leader in our state assembly. From the Bronx, Assembly Member Chantel Jackson.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. I am still your social worker. I'm still licensed, so.
It never ends. It never ends, right?
No, I just social work on a larger scale.
That's right. Very big scale.
Yeah, so I just wanted to first commend the city of New York, the state of New York, for doing what's right and making sure that we stayed safe and made sure that people got vaccinated who wanted to get vaccinated. I'm here in the South Bronx, and the mayor knows that here in the South Bronx, it's difficult for us to get people vaccinated because of the there are a number of issues. One, there was a lack of access, but we cleared that up. We made sure that we had sites all over the place. And then the next issue was about trust. There was a number of people saying that they didn't necessarily trust the vaccine, and then others were saying like they would need to be incentivized uh, in order to go out and get vaccinated. And so I'm thankful for the mayor and his team for constantly looking for new ways to bring information to people, but to also make sure that we acknowledge what the community is saying that they need. And so this way of organizations that people trust, when they give out the information, people are more likely to believe it and more likely to follow through with it. So our faith-based leaders and others, um, thank you all for doing the work. And now that we're going to incentivize people financially, this is looking up for the South Bronx. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member. And I really thank you. I know you've been spreading the word. You fought early on. We were together originally up there in Bathgate. You fought early on to get more and more access for the people of the Bronx, more and more vaccination sites. And you're right, that piece has moved constantly, but now it is about bringing the community organizations, the houses of worship, the NYCHA resident councils in, and it's about those incentives to really help people to focus and want to do it. But it takes voices like yours to make a difference. I want to really thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, now, everybody, that's still number one thing. Bringing back the city is just vaccinating people more and more and more. So far, you've seen the amazing impact vaccination has had. We're just going to keep going and deepening the effort all the time. But a recovery also absolutely depends on safety, public safety. I keep saying it. I think it's really important for people to hear. We need public safety for recovery. We need a recovery for public safety. The two go together. The more and more the life of this city comes back, the safer everyone is. As people are coming back to the subways, to the buses, to the streets, the safer we all become. So these pieces go together, and we're always looking for new approaches to intensify public safety in this city. We went through hell together last year. We all know it. We went through a perfect storm. We went through something unprecedented. We went through a global pandemic. And yet, look how quickly this city is rebounding. The NYPD, I can tell you, after 8 years working closely with the leadership of the NYPD never gives up. Keeps creating new strategies, new approaches. That's what we learned way back when in 1994 with CompStat, the NYPD's incredible ability to innovate new approaches. Today, you're going to hear from the leadership of the NYPD about the importance of addressing a growing problem which links to many other problems. We have seen a proliferation of counterfeit paper license plates. Now you hear it first, that doesn't sound like much of an issue. Let me tell you what it really means. We see more and more folks who are involved in crashes, killing and hurting their fellow New Yorkers who are using these counterfeit illegal license plates. Sometimes hit and run crashes where people try to evade detection with a fake plate. We see a connection to a variety of crimes. We see a connection to any number of crimes, including violent crimes. This is an area where the NYPD has noticed more and more of a trend, and they're acting on that trend. Thousands and thousands of these illegal and fraudulent license plates out there. As always, the NYPD looks at the facts, looks at the data, adjusts strategies, and makes an impact. Here to tell you more about it. First, you'll hear from our police commissioner, then our chief of department. My pleasure to introduce Commissioner Dermot Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you outlined, when you look at the proliferation, of paper license plates, this is something that we saw come up last year. It's important to know that at the time, myself, Chief of Detectives at the time, Rodney Harrison, had many strategy meetings, and we put into place a number of things to combat this. We think at this time it's the right time to really brief everyone on where we are now, warn the public also that if you have a car, it's how important it is to have registration, inspection, insurance, and things of that nature proper. We've done an initiative already where we've seized a number of cars, but we have a strategy right now that's really coming together that works under Chief Juanita Holmes from Patrol, Chief Kim Royster, Chief Jimmy Essick, the Chief of Detectives, and why. The why is really important here because we have seen a clear connection at times to violence, and Rodney Harrison is going to go into detail with you some of the specifics that we've seen. We've seen the same fraudulent plate on numerous vehicles. Just this week, we had a shooting in Queens, Southeast Queens, where the individuals are in a car and a fraudulent plate. But there's more than just the violence. There's also parking. There's also moving traffic around New York City. There's also the sense of fairness that people pay to have insurance and registration, and some people are getting around that. You saw the article this week on the paper about people bypassing tolls. So whether it's drunk driving, whether it's hit and runs, or whether it's some of the gun violence, we think we have a good grasp on moving forward. And now to detail exactly what we're doing, your Chief of Department, Rodney Harrison. Rodney?
Commissioner, Mr. Mayor, good morning. Thank you very much. This all started when I was the Chief of Detectives, and with the increase in violence, we struggled to make arrests on many of our drive-by shooting incidents that had a fraudulent paper plate attached to the vehicle. During that time, we did several small initiatives in our areas of violence, making arrests and seizing cars that had fraudulent paper plates. But just as of recent, a couple of examples. We had 7 drive-by shooting incidents between Brooklyn South and Brooklyn North, where a gray Jeep, a white Maxima, and a black Mercedes-Benz were all involved in a shooting that had fraudulent paper plates attached to them. Transitioning to the Chief of Department, we see a wider concern with these fraudulent plates. Vehicles speeding through school zones where kids are playing. Vehicles driving through red lights and hitting pedestrians, causing serious injuries and driving off. Parking illegally and causing quality of life concerns that can hinder the flow of traffic. The evasion of auto insurance, which can be a disturbance for someone involved in a vehicle accident. And last but not least, having a concern of potential terrorist plots. This initiative will be conducted in all 5 boroughs throughout the city. The results of the initiative will have an impact on protecting New Yorkers. All of our patrol officers are currently being trained by our auto crime unit to be able to identify a fraudulent plate while patrolling and serving the citizens of New York City. This criminal phenomenon is a byproduct of COVID-19, when the Department of Motor Vehicles was shut down and provided limited services, and criminals taking advantage and producing fake fraudulent paper plates in return for finances. Certain states have lacked procedures that have allowed mischievous individuals, some of them being dealers, to gain access to fraudulent plates and sell them on different social media platforms, either Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and other platforms as well. On a positive note, Texas Governor Abbott signed a House Bill 3927 yesterday. This will give Texas DMV the authority to suspend a dealer who is selling tags inappropriately. This takes effect September of this year and should help eliminate the Texas tags from our streets. The goal of this initiative is to stop the purchase of fake and fraudulently obtained permits. This new law passed in Texas will definitely help achieve that goal. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chief. And look, everyone, this is a strategy that's going to be put into place energetically to address something that we're seeing connected to, as I said, a variety of problems, a variety of crimes. And this is the NYPD doing something strategic to make an impact on our safety and our quality of life. So I commend the Commissioner and the Chief for developing this initiative and implementing it all over the 5 boroughs. Now, we're talking about all of the things that are part of our recovery, all the ways we foster recovery. We also now can make changes because we're having this recovery, because we're making this progress. And obviously, as of yesterday, with the state ending restrictions across the board, a very, very important sign and a signal that it's time to do things differently. One area where we've been very focused is on protecting and serving homeless New Yorkers, helping them from the streets to shelter, and then from shelter to permanent affordable housing. That has happened for more than 150,000 New Yorkers in the course of our administration. We've gotten them from shelter to permanent affordable housing, and we're going to keep doing that work. In shelter is where we can provide support, a variety of services, and that pathway out of shelter into a better life. So we said in the midst of the worst of the pandemic that we had to take immediate and emergency action to protect homeless folks, move them out of shelter settings to hotels for their health and safety. But now the situation has changed. We obviously have record low COVID levels, vaccinations rising all the time. It is time to move homeless folks who were in hotels for a temporary period of time back to shelters where they can get the support they need. We're talking about approximately 8,000 New Yorkers who are now in 60 temporary hotels. We are going to start the process of moving folks back to shelters. And again, the shelter is only a step along the way. The ultimate goal is affordable housing and a new life. Now, everything is ready to go. Obviously, the situation is greatly improved. All of our planning is in place. We know exactly which shelters we're going to be bringing people back to. They are being prepared. We're ready to go. What we need is authorization from the state of New York. Back a month ago, on May 18th, our Department of Social Services asked the state of New York to authorize the return of folks in temporary hotel locations to permanent shelter locations. We have not yet gotten that sign off from the state of New York. Obviously, given yesterday's announcement in particular, it's time for us to get that clear sign off from the state so we can move forward. Once we get that sign off, we can start immediately moving people to shelters and getting back to that work of moving them forward in their lives. We will be able to complete this by approximately the end of July. This is something that's going to help move us forward, but we need the state to make clear that they are giving the authorization. I want to say one more thing about the folks who do the work of supporting the homeless. I don't think they get the credit they deserve, whether it's the outreach workers out there talking to folks who are sleeping on the streets and convincing them to come in. This is happening every day in our city. These incredibly good-hearted people who go out and have the conversation as many times as it takes with folks who have gone through a lot of trouble and convince people to come in. I've had the conversation so many times with these really noble souls who do this work, and when they talk about a victory, when they talk about bringing someone in off the street and getting them to a better life, there's a glow in their faces for good reason. What an amazing act of kindness and goodness. But we also have the people who work in the shelters who help folks who become homeless. I always say, there but for the grace of God go any of us. Folks who become homeless have always the potential to turn around and get back on their feet and move forward. But incredibly good people working in homeless shelters to give people support and services, mental health support when they need it, substance misuse support when they need it, support connecting them to new housing, helping families. These people do amazing, amazing work, and I want to thank every one of them, and they are ready to serve homeless New Yorkers back in our shelter system. Okay, let's go to our indicators. And again, continued good news because people are getting vaccinated. So thank you to everyone who has gotten vaccinated and everyone who has not yet gotten vaccinated. I hope what we went through earlier in this presentation will encourage you further to step forward now, and now's the time. So number one, daily number of people admitted to New York City hospitals for suspected COVID-19. Today's report, 69 patients, confirmed positivity of 12.68%, hospitalization rate 0.45 per 100,000. Number two, new reported cases on a 7-day average. Today's report, 188 cases. And number three, percentage of people testing positive citywide for COVID-19. Today's report, continuing the lowest we've ever seen since the pandemic began on a 7-day rolling average, 0.57%. Really amazing. Let's keep going in the right direction. A few words in Spanish on the efforts that we are taking to keep this city safe and to make sure that public safety is a core part of our recovery. Nada es más importante que la seguridad de cada neoyorquino. Tenemos que ser creativos y hacerlo todo para combatir la violencia armada. Nuestro nuevo esfuerzo contra las placas falsas no hará que nuestra ciudad sea más segura. With that, let's turn to our colleagues in the media. And please let me know the name and outlet of each journalist.
Good morning. We will now begin our Q&A. As a reminder, we are joined by Police Commissioner Dermot Shea, Chief of Department Rodney Harrison, Commissioner Steve Banks, Dr. Dave Choksi, and Dr. Mitch Katz. Our first question for today goes to Dan from ABC.
Hi there, good morning. Thank you so much for taking my question.
Good morning, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you, sir. Last night we had quite a big celebration for the state hitting the 70% vaccination rate. But when we take a closer look at zip codes, many of our areas have less than 30% vaccination rate. For example, Far Rockaway has a rate of only 27% of people vaccinated. That rate has been low since winter. What are you doing to get more people vaccinated in these areas?
Well, Dan, it's exactly what we were talking about earlier. It's going to take persistence and just intense, constant effort at the grassroots. The referral bonus program says to houses of worship, to NYCHA resident councils, to community-based organizations, go and literally find individuals who are willing to get vaccinated, and we will reward your organization for it and make sure that money comes into the community to do good. That, I think, is going to inspire a lot of focus. The incentives, obviously, incredible incentives. I don't know about you, but $2,500 got my full attention. I think for a lot of people, it will. And then, the effort that Dr. Choksi has talked about, getting doctors and pediatricians to talk to their patients very systematically and tracking that effort. All of those pieces are going to add up. We've got to overcome hesitancy in some cases with dialogue, with information. And time has been on our side. A lot of people started out hesitant, over time got more willing. But I still contend, and we see a lot of evidence of this, there's still hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people who hesitancy is not the issue. They just need to focus, they need it to be convenient, they need it to be in the community, they need some incentive. We're just gonna keep going nonstop and keep building up those numbers. Go ahead, Dan.
I spoke with a council member in Far Rockaway who said it's not so much a trust issue there as an access issue in educating the public that these vaccination centers that are relatively new are open and available, and is encouraging more marketing in communities that are the hardest hit. Is that something that you're considering moving forward? Or do you think that we've done enough marketing?
Oh no, we're constantly doing the marketing. I think the council member makes a good point. And part of what is so important about the marketing is to add new elements that really get people's positive attention, thus the incentives, which unquestionably are getting attention and people appreciate, but also to bring it to the grassroots. We can put up advertising and all day long, different types of posters, whatever, that helps. But getting community-based organizations to make it a priority, to go out and reach people, that really, really helps.
Our next question goes to Juliet from 1010 Wins.
Good morning, everybody. This question is for the commissioner and for the chief of department. What are your plans this weekend for Washington Square Park, and do you think you need a more consistent approach to dealing with the issues there?
Yeah, I'll start and I'll let Rodney jump in. Julia, thank you for the question. We're working very closely with the Parks Department on that, as well as getting input from the community in that area. There's going to be a presence of police officers in there, and our goal is pretty simple here for people to be allowed to use the park, because it is a beautiful park. It always has been, but also public safety. So we'll continue to be there for the residents of that community, where we are intending on being there, enforcing the closing with the Parks Department if requested. Overall, when you look at what we do throughout New York City, we have, I would say, Mr. Mayor, probably thousands, not hundreds, of parks. And we're gonna balance the needs of the community and be there for New Yorkers. Rodney, any specifics?
Sure. So one of the things that you're going to see going into this weekend is our Community Affairs Bureau going out and passing out flyers to anybody that's inside the park regarding informing them the time frames that the park will be closed. I think that's going to be a step in the right direction. The second thing is we're going to allow the Parks Department to take the lead in regards to going through the park and trying to escort people outside of the park during the hours of closure. Unfortunately, we've had incidents in the past that got a little contentious. If it gets to that point, that's when the NYPD will assist and step in. But we're just going to follow normal protocols like we've had in the past, and we're looking forward to getting through some type of cooperation going into the future with the park being closed.
And also, Chief, I want you to talk about the community meeting, because I think it's important for Juliet and everyone to hear this, that there's also effort to constantly communicate with the community and hear concerns and different ideas. That's coming up in the next few days, I think.
So that today we're having what's called a Bill de Blasio meeting with some of the residents outside or right around Washington Square Park. We want to hear their concerns. We want to make sure that we're able to address them appropriately. So I'm looking forward to hearing their voices and see how we could assist.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Juliet.
Okay, and this question, Mr. Mayor, is for you. Now that most restrictions have been lifted in New York, when will you be holding in-person briefings?
We're going to figure that out. I think we have had a really good experience with this approach because it's allowed so many journalists to participate and so many guests to participate in new ways. So we want to keep some of what we've learned here, some very positive features, obviously looking forward to seeing people in person too. So we're going to figure out what combination makes sense and how to implement it as we move forward, Juliet.
Our next question goes to Andrea from CBS.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Mr. Mayor, this first question is for you regarding the homeless hotels. I had asked the governor last month if there was any state COVID guidance that would bar the city from putting homeless people back into shelters, and the governor said the short answer is no. So I'm just wondering what exactly does the state need to sign off on, because they claim that there was nothing, that they had anything to do with it.
Right, and look, we are paying attention to the folks who are the specialists in this area at the state level. If they simply want to send us a letter today saying you do not need any further authorization, you can do as you wish, that's great. We would love that. They can do that today. I would welcome it. But our understanding from previous experiences on this issue is that we did require state authorization, and so we simply want that to be done formally. It can be done as quickly as today, and we will immediately start the effort. So we're ready to go. They just need to communicate with us one way or the other. Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you. And then just for the commissioner or chief regarding the fraudulent license plates, can you just explain a little bit more about? I know you said that the police officers are being trained. So just on regular patrols, can you explain a little bit more about what they're looking for? What will happen? Will they, when they pull a car over, if they suspect that the plate is fraudulent? Can you just explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'll jump in and Rodney can finish. It's important to remember here that there are legitimate paper plates out there too. If you purchase a car, many times you will be issued a temporary plate. So what we've done in the past is, and we're gonna really step that up with additional training. We've prepared training videos for the officers, things done in collaboration with outside agencies coming in to help us, as well as our auto crime professionals. This is what they deal with. Things to look for, things to spot fraudulent plates. And there are many. And we've done that already, but now we're going to, with this proliferation that we see, we're really going to increase that training to make sure that, number one, public safety. We get as many of these cars in compliance. We do it the right way. We do it in cooperation with people. We don't want to seize cars and then have people lose their cars. We know how important cars are to people when they're lawfully and they need to get to work and other things. But what we're trying to do is strike that right balance here. Rodney?
Yeah. So there's certain markings that our police officers on patrol will be trained to be able to identify if a plate is fraudulent or not. If we identify that this plate that was obtained is fraudulent, that car will be removed and it'll be vouchered. And the person who is the registered owner of that vehicle needs to come with the appropriate paperwork to recover the car. If not, it will be sent off for auction.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Our next question goes to Amanda from Politico.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, how are you?
Good, Amanda. How you been?
I'm good, thanks. So I wanted to follow up on your radio interview this morning. You were asked about ranked choice voting and, hearing people's thoughts about how they're ranking, and you had suggested that people do more research. What does more research look like to you beyond watching the debate?
Yeah, I think, and again, I really feel this, and I've been thinking about it myself, Amanda. I I've been in this work a long time, and yet I realize a lot of the time, I go into the booth and I'm kind of just going by my gut or going by a piece of information. And I think what ranked choice voting calls upon us to do is, be a little more intentional, a little more purposeful. Don't make a decision in the booth because it's 5 people and it's multiple offices. Think about it in advance. I think it means things like looking at the voter guide, looking at the websites of the different candidates, making sure you have a sense of their positions on the issues. It's a different process. It's a richer process in so many ways, and it really empowers the voter by keeping your vote alive. But I do think it requires everyone to take a little more time to think things through. And obviously, the debate will be a crucial piece of that equation. Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, so early voting obviously has started, and you had mentioned you're going to be traditional and vote on primary day. I guess my question is, what's been holding you up in terms of, you're saying that you're still trying to decide, like, primary season's been going on for a while. So my question is, why is it taking you this long to come to a decision on who you're ranking and how you're ranking?
Look,
Could you talk a little bit more about that?
yeah, I think I still want to hear more about the vision. This has been something I've talked about several times. I respect the candidates. I know some of them well. There's others I don't know so well, but I want to hear more about where they're going to take us. And I think there's still a level of discussion that hasn't been reached. And I really think, in fairness to the candidates, the intensive focus on COVID, particularly the end of last year, beginning of this year, has taken away some of the time and energy that would have gone into for people looking at candidates or the media covering candidates. So I think to some extent, everything's been pushed back. But I do want to hear more, and I hope we'll hear it tonight, of a clear vision. When I ran, I think my vision was pretty straightforward and unmistakable. I wanted to address the tale of 2 cities, particularly income inequality. I wanted to tax the wealthy so we could have pre-K for every child for free. I wanted to end the broken and unconstitutional policy of stop and frisk. I wanted paid sick days for New Yorkers. It was pretty straightforward. I hope we're going to hear more of that tonight, exactly what people are saying they will do for us.
Our next question goes to Ruvain from Hamodia.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning, Ruvain. How you doing, man?
I'm good. If I may, I'd like to add my vote for keeping at least some version of these Zoom briefings. They are very helpful for journalists, as you mentioned. So my question is for Dr. Choksi. It was announced in the news a while ago that they said the vaccines work they know for sure for 6 months, but now they're saying, I haven't heard any follow-up of how long it works for. I know they can't speed up time in the lab, but I'm just thinking the first vaccines were given in December, and I don't want to be the Grinch that stole the summer of New York, but isn't that that's 6 months up? So what do we know now about, what's the latest that we know now about how vaccines work?
I'm going to give you real credit for turn of the phrase, the Grinch who stole the summer of New York. That was agile. Okay, Dr. Choksi and Dr. Katz, I'm going to turn to you. Obviously, I will start by saying, Ruvain, there's a lot we know and there's still things we don't know, considering we're dealing with a disease that literally none of us had even heard of a few years ago, and we're learning as we go. But I will say the actual results from the vaccines have been striking, unbelievably clear, as expressed by the reduction in positivity and reduction in hospitalization, reduction in death. So we know it works. As to how long and when we'd have to think about things like boosters, Dr. Choksi, and followed by Dr. Katz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Ruvain, for the important question. Let me start with the big picture, which is that the vaccines work, and all of the evidence that we have thus far is that they work extremely well, particularly to prevent severe illness. But growingly, we're finding that they also work to prevent infections in the first place and the transmission of those infections. So that's all good news, and the reason that we are doing everything that we can to ensure that people get the protection that vaccines afford. With respect to the duration of immunity from vaccination, you are right that thus far the studies indicate that it is at least for 6 months. We're continuing to gather data on that because it just takes time for that data on the duration of immunity to actually accumulate over time. My expectation is that we will find that the vaccines last for longer than 6 months, but that does have to be borne out in the science. The final point that I'll make is that there are still some unknowns with respect to how the variants and particularly newer variants will interact with the vaccines. And so that's one of the reasons that boosters may need to be administered at some point in the future. But the clear message for now, again, is that vaccines work and they work for a long time.
Thank you. Dr. Katz.
I think Dr. Choksi did a great job answering the question. Healthcare workers were among the first people to get vaccinated, and we have not seen cases in any large number of people now that they're getting near that 6-month mark. So I feel very confident that the vaccines will go for longer than 6 months, and we'll watch the data very carefully. And if it shows signs that there need to be boosters, we will be doing boosters. But I think we're all going to have a great summer. I know I'm looking forward to being on my rollerblades in Hudson River Park. So don't take the fun away from us, Ruben.
Yeah. Blade carefully, Mitch.
Yes.
Okay?
Amen.
Ruben, go ahead.
Just a very brief follow-up. You mentioned earlier this week that you'd be putting out guidance for the restaurants as far as having to use the outdoor sheds there or having to give it up for parking space. I'm just wondering when that guidance is going to be put out. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. And I need to get you a clear answer on that. Really do want to emphasize the common sense point to all the folks in the restaurant community. If you want to use that space at the curb and you're going to put up outdoor dining, we welcome it. We'll support you. We'll work with you. If you're not going to use the space, don't take it up. And if you're not going to use it now, but you might use it later, you can activate it at any point. It just all that matters is when cars move out, you can take the space and put up your seating and everything else. So you said it really well, Ruben. We got to get clear with people. Don't hold the space unless you intend to use it. When you do, we'll work with you to make it work, and we'll put out clearer guidelines on that.
Our next question goes to Nolan from the Post.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
How you doing, Nolan?
I'm all right, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
I'm okay. I could use more caffeine, Nolan. I'd say it's a running issue with you and me. I just want to say, I wish I had even more caffeine in my life.
Well, it seems fixable, and I also, might just encourage the Nets to put away the competition in the first half of the game instead of waiting.
Oh.
Second.
I'm telling James Harden you said that. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, second half, James Harden. Anyways, the police brass are there, so I figured we'd ask a couple of questions on that. First of which is, what's the benchmark for this summer? How many murders and how many shootings show success this summer?
I will have our colleagues answer you, but I want to just frame for a moment, Nolan. Again, we are coming out of a global pandemic and a perfect storm of negative factors, and you can see it all over the country, the impact this has had in terms of increase in gun violence. We will turn it around. I want to be really blunt and clear. We've had this conversation many, many times internally. We will turn it around. I can't tell you the exact day, and I think it is a mistake to say, here is our exact metrical pattern. What I can tell you is the gun arrests have been strong. The cooperation with the community is improving all the time. The investments in the community are making an impact. The courts are coming back. The economy is coming back. I'm very confident about where we're going. But I think it's still going to take time to know exactly how it's going to play out. Commissioner and then Chief.
Hey, Nolan, I share your desire for caffeine, too. Thank you for that question. The simple answer is zero. And some may look at that and say that's unrealistic, but I assure you that in this agency, from every cop on the street to every civilian member to myself and everyone in between, day and night, all through the day, thinks about how to keep people safe. We are acutely tuned into every incident of violence that occurs. Every single incident we take personally. And every single incident that happens, we examine with an eye towards how do we prevent this from ever happening again. That's whether it's a child or whether it's an incident of domestic violence or strangers on the street. That is the absolute truth. We know that we're in a tough time. I mean, it was not long ago that we had record lows in violence, and it is the goal of, I know I'm speaking for Rodney and myself, and I know the mayor shares this view as well. How do we not only get back to that as quickly as possible, but surpass it? That is the focus of everyone in this agency. We are moving positively forward that. There's a lot of positives that I take, but certainly we got to intensify on our end with the police department, how we deploy, how we police this city, how do we work with others, how do we work with the community, how do we work with violence interrupters, how do we work closer with the district attorneys, how do we get those courts working in such a manner that they're prioritizing all the work. There's a lot of good that's going on, but I'll be the first to say it's never quick enough for me.
Amen. Chief?
Hey, good morning, Nolan, and I think we're dropping the ball here by not giving Kevin Durant his respect. He had 49 points last night, so let's make sure we acknowledge the great shooting on the offensive game he had last night. Regarding your concern about the violence, yes, it's a struggle. You know, we take every single shooting incident personal. We do see a spike in the borough of the Bronx, and we're putting a lot of resources there. The one thing that I'm very optimistic about is the NYPD, we're resilient. We evaluate every single week regarding how we're going to come up with innovative ideas to protect the city, and we're going to continue to fight because we're the experts in public safety. I'm sure that the men and women are really putting their best foot forward to bring the violence down and make this a safer city. But I appreciate your question.
Thank you. Go ahead, Nolan.
And just to follow up and to apologize, it wouldn't be a back and forth between us if I wasn't trying to badly troll you over your sports fandoms, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
But to the very serious topic of these shootings, you know, take schools for instance. We all expect or hope that every child in school will get a good quality public education, will graduate high school capable of doing reading and writing and mathematics on grade level. We also know that getting that perfect mark is not possible. So there are benchmarks that are set that we say, this is what success looks like. How many students graduate? How many students graduate with proficiencies? How many of those students go on to college? So my question is, and I think it's a very reasonable one, with the factors on the ground, what does a successful summer look like to you and to the police commissioner when it comes to shootings and when it comes to murder, so we have something to judge your success or failure by?
Yeah, it's a very fair question, but Nolan, again, I don't think there's any fear of contradiction here. We are coming out of a global pandemic. We're coming out of something absolutely unprecedented. The normal rules don't apply. Our job is to constantly make progress. We are resetting the equation. Where do we want to get? We want to get ultimately back to where we were pre-pandemic. Is that going to happen overnight? No. But we want to get to that place, and I believe we can. We had to, over the last year plus, fight crime without a functioning court system, with 1 million people out of work, with none of the normal supports that make up our society, with a lot of our officers sick and out because of COVID. We had every conceivable disadvantage. Now the pieces are coming back together, and you see it in the action on the ground. The gun arrests have been a great example. The growing cooperation between NYPD and community, exemplified by a lot of the efforts the commissioner's undertaken, working with community groups to make investments in communities. Obviously, this initiative today on the fraudulent license plates is a new approach, an innovative strategy to address a host of problems. We're going to keep coming back, and ultimately we will turn the tide. But because we're dealing with something absolutely unprecedented, we can't tell you the day it will happen. I can only tell you it will happen.
We have time for 2 more questions today. The next question goes to Yoav from the city.
Hi, everyone. The NYPD, I asked about this last week, Mayor. This is for the commissioner. The NYPD provided us a list of outcomes for alleged misconduct by officers during last year's protests that were captured in 64 videos that were assembled by the New York Times. But the department declined to reveal the names of officers, even if they had substantiated allegations, when the discipline was deemed to be minor. So I wanted to ask you, Commissioner, is it the NYPD's policy not to name officers with substantiated allegations against them if the discipline is minor? And given the repeal of 50A, I'm just wondering what the legal basis for such a policy is.
And I'll just start, before turning to the Commissioner, say two important things, because you did raise this point before, Yoav. One, obviously, with those cases, the CCRB retains the opportunity to look at any of those they want to look at and follow through if they choose to. Two, we're still refining our approaches on many fronts. 50A, the change of 50A is something this commissioner and his two predecessors believed in, I believe in, and we've put out a huge amount of information since the law was changed. But we're still working to continue to improve transparency on many levels. So with that said, turning to the Commissioner.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the question. I think, as you asked the question about the specific questions, I think there's a larger discussion here. I think that when you look back on my time as the commissioner of this agency, certainly building upon many things that were put into place already, when you go back to Jimmy before me, when you go back to the Blue Ribbon panel, but I think it's important to have that discussion. When you look at what we have done over the last 18 months, to the mayor's point, we're not done, but we've done an awful lot in terms of, publishing the discipline matrix and refining it. And we did that not insular. We did that with the community input, with stakeholders' input. People had different opinions. Sometimes we took it and made modifications. Sometimes we said, you know what, we're not going to go that route, but here's why. But it is something that is fluid. When you look at what we did with the recent MOU with the Civilian Complaint Review Board, when you look at what we did with our publishing of discipline data, and here's to your point, not every single instance, but publishing a discipline matrix where people can look up the history, and this is coming out of 50A, and look up individuals, creating in essence a scorecard for serious infractions, linking on that to then where additional information can be obtained, whether it's about lawsuits, whether it's about Civilian Complaint Review Board cases. I think that we have done more in the last 18 months to further the transparency around discipline than has been done in probably the last 30 years. I'm proud of it. It's a work in progress. We'll certainly take recommendations, but I am pretty confident that right now we're striking that right balance of the rights of the officers, from minor infractions or not guilty infractions, something that I didn't think was appropriate to publish, versus serious offenses and guilty ones. We'll continue to monitor this moving forward, but that's where we are right now.
Thank you. Go ahead, Yoav.
A related question for the Commissioner. A number of the cases from last year's protests were closed because investigators couldn't identify the officers or the victims in the videos, but at least two of the victims filed notices of claims with the city and could have been tracked that way, which we were able to do. And so should the public be concerned that the IAB didn't take that step?
Again, let me start and pass to the Commissioner. Continuing to remind you that if there's anything else that needs to be looked at that was missed previously or that the connection wasn't clear to make, CCRB is obviously a very pertinent venue. Two, I can say, having worked 8 years with Commissioner Shea and Chief Harrison and so many other good leaders at NYPD, we're constantly working together to try and figure out what to do better. So if there's something that we need to learn from here about how to cross-check these different pieces of information, we want to learn from it and we want to act on it. Commissioner.
I would just say to that point broadly, we have a very robust internal affairs bureau under Commissioner Joe Resnick. I have 100% confidence in them. I'm briefed frequently on cases. I'm proud that in those rare instances where we have a occurrences that shouldn't happen. Quite often, it's our own people that are reporting it to internal affairs, which I take as an extremely positive sign. To your question, there could be any number of reasons why. Does it concern me? It's something that we will look at, absolutely. Does it concern me on face value? Not necessarily. There's a number of reasons why in reaching out to people, sometimes people don't want to cooperate, or for other reasons don't choose to go forward in this avenue and explore the other avenue of filing action. So I have seen that before, that no one should draw any conclusions from that.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Our final question for today goes to Ashley from the New York Times.
Good morning to everyone on the call, and very.
How you doing, Ashley?
Very happy. I'm good. How are you, Mr. Mayor?
Doing well, thank you.
Also, a very belated happy birthday to the police commissioner. Getting on up there.
Belated, yeah.
Getting on up there. Wait a minute. Wait, that was left-handed.
Where's the cake?
I wanted to ask about the license plate issue. I'm curious if the police officials can give us, either the chief or the commissioner can give us a sense of the size of this problem, such as, how many drive-by shootings there were that remain unsolved because of these illegal license plates, and what's your sense of why there's been an increase in this phenomenon during the pandemic?
I'm going to just start as the layman before turning to my colleagues, Ashley, and say we do know there's thousands and thousands of these plates in New York City right now, illegal and fraudulent. And again, as we've talked about in recent weeks, one of the most striking things to me is the fact that whatever the crime that could be committed, including the traffic offenses that could be deadly, the hit and runs, et cetera, you immediately undercut the ability of the NYPD to find someone if they have a fraudulent plate. So this is why it connects in many different ways, but in terms of magnitude of the problem, thousands for sure minimum. In terms of the specific question that Ashley's raising, who wants to go first?
I'll take it, Mr. Mayor and Commissioner, if you don't mind. Ashley, good morning, and if you just take a look at shooting for the year to date, and these are not the exact numbers, but we do have 33 identified shooting incidents that are involved with these fraudulent plates. We also have another 60 incidents with these fraudulent plates where it's a shot-fired job called. There's 562 crashes involving these fake plates where 293 injuries had occurred. So these numbers are alarming, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I think I'm lowballing the numbers. I think that those numbers are a lot higher. Once again, there's still a lot of investigations going on with some of these shooting incidents, but it's troublesome, and we saw this last year in 2020, and we have to address it.
Thank you.
Ashley, I'll just add in. I echo what Rodney said. But it's an imperfect science, too, and I agree with the mayor. Thousands is an accurate number. As you specifically related to violence, you and I probably have talked about this at some point in the past. When we see gang violence from, one area to another, inevitably, certainly we have people that walk, certainly we have people that ride bicycles, but more often than not, what we have is gang members getting in a car and driving from one area to the rival's area. It is most definitely not uncommon to take it a step further, that gang members that are willing to drive around and shoot at someone and endanger innocent people are not that worried about following the New York State registration laws. We encounter that very frequently, and the numbers that Rodney says is probably the tip of the iceberg in terms of the amount of work and investigative manpower that goes into tracking. Just because we don't have at the instant captured on video that they drove by in a car or ran right into the car is usually a block away, 2 blocks away. So we think that it is a problem. It's something, one spoke of what we're doing on the violence to try to tackle it. And as we said earlier, there's a lot of facets to this in terms of just pedestrian safety and things of that nature too.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ashley.
I just want to re-ask the second part of that question, which is, do we have a sense of why that is. Do we think that that the state's move, for instance, to cashless tolling has kind of helped facilitate these illegal license plates coming in from out of state, or if there's something else that's happening on the roads or in other states? I mean, sounds like you're pointing to a specific increase during the pandemic, and other than the country falling apart, what is there something else or something specific that you can point to that's driving these increases? Social media, these license plates have been sold on social media for
Ashley,
years, I think.
yeah.
And
I'll start with that one. It's not scientific, but I could tell you, with 30 years of experience, from time to time, we see sometimes things not all that different from this. There was a time in the past when we had a proliferation of out-of-state plates, not paper, but plates. And we would call them phantom plates from Pennsylvania or other states. From time to time, we see this crop up. That's pre-COVID. That's not to say that COVID doesn't have something to do with this one, where multiple states, DMVs, probably were experiencing, less than optimal work environments there. So it's probably a little of everything you mentioned. The social media piece, there are a number of investigations that the NYPD is involved with. Rodney touched on one out of the state, and he may want to say more, but also that we're dealing with whether it's local law enforcement, state or federal law enforcement, as well as other agencies that are seeing this in not just New York, but other states.
Rodney, you'd like to add?
No, I just pretty much want to echo what the commissioner stated. This is another process for criminals to make financial gain. And, they're selling these fraudulent paper plates online, sometimes $70 up to $200. And if you sell enough of them, you could probably make out pretty good. So it's something that we have to address, but there's so many moving parts. But one of the things that I'm concerned about the most is public safety, and that's to make sure that I address that as a priority.
Yeah, and thank you. And just to pull it all together, I think the fact that we see a trend, and Ashley, I think you're asking a really important question. What's the origin of the trend? What it has to do with this? What does it have to do with this moment in history? I do think the fact that some people saw an opportunity to profit, that certain folks believed it was going to be a tool they could use in the work they were doing of being unfortunately violent towards others. We see the trend, and we've come up with a strategy to disrupt the trend. And I think this is really the wraparound here, that we went through massive disruption last year, but like New York City, NYPD got right back up and came up with approaches to address everything we were seeing, and coming up with new approaches when we saw a new phenomenon. And this has always been the NYPD at its best. We're going to disrupt this pattern. We're going to make sure that there's more and more pressure felt out there that if you're driving a car, it has to be with a legal plate. And I think the very attention we're giving to it right now is going to help to address the issue as well. Once people know they can't get away with something, it tends to help us stop a negative trend. So everyone, as we conclude this morning, this is an example of the fact New York City always comes back. New York City always finds a way. We're going to overcome these challenges. And we could be very proud of the fact that the biggest challenge we've ever faced, COVID, is now on the run, because the people of the city have done so much to turn this situation around. That's something to be proud of. Thank you, everybody.